Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballava Giribharadhari Gopi Jana Ballava Giribharadhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballava Giribharadhari Gopi Jana Ballava Giribharadhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnavad Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Status Srimad. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Sri Sri Radha Radhanath Ki, Sri Giri Govardhan Ki, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki, Sankirtan Yagya Ki, Go Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 4. Sati quits her body. Verse 12. Doshan Paresham He Gunesho Sadhava Grinante Kechen Na Bhavadrisho Dvija Gunams Cha Falgun Bahule Karishnava Mahatamas Tesho Avidad Bhavan Agham Doshan Paresham Higuneshu Sadhavo Griyananti Kechinna Bhavadrisho Dvija Gunams Chafalgun Bahuli Karishnavo Mahatamastesh Vavidad Bhavan Agham Doshan Paresham Hi Guneshu Sadhavo Griyananti Kechinna Bhavadrisho Dvija Gunams Chafalgun Bahuli Karishnavo Mahatamastesh Vavidad Bhavan Agham Doshan Paresham Hi Guneshu Sadhavo Grinanti Caitanya Bhavadrisho Dvija Gunams Falgun Bahuli Karishnavo Mahatamastesh Vavidad Bhavanagam Doshan Paresham Higuneshu Sadhavo Grinanti Caitanya Bhavadrisho Dvija Gunams Falgun Bahuli Karishnavo Mahatamastesh Vavidad Bhavanagam Ladies, Atamastesh Vavidad Bhavanganam Doshan faults Paresham of others he for Gunesho in the qualities Sadhava sadhus Grinanti find Kechit some na not Bhavadrisha like you Dvija O twice born Gunan qualities Cha and Falgun small Bahuli Karishnava greatly magnifies Mahatma the greatest persons Teshu among them Avidat find Bhavan you Agham the fault. Translation: twice born Daksha, a man like you can simply find fault in the qualities of others. Lord Shiva, however, not only finds no faults with others' qualities, but if someone has a little good quality, he magnifies it greatly. Unfortunately, you have found fault with such a great soul. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. King Daksha is addressed here by his daughter Sati as Dvija, twice born. Twice born refers to the higher classes of men, namely the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. In other words, a Dvija is not an ordinary man, but one who has studied the Vedic literature from a spiritual master and can discriminate between good and bad. Therefore, it is supposed that he understands logic and philosophy. Sati, Daksha's daughter, put before him sound arguments. There are some highly qualified persons who accept only the good qualities of others. Just as a bee is always interested in the honey in the flowers and does not consider the thorns and colors, highly qualified persons who are uncommon accept only the good qualities of others, not considering their bad qualities, whereas the common man can judge what are good qualities and what are bad qualities. Among the uncommonly good souls, there are still gradations, and the best good soul is one who accepts an insignificant asset of a person and magnifies that good quality. Lord Shiva is also called Ashutosh, which refers to one who is satisfied very easily and who offers to any person the highest level of benediction. For example, once a devotee of Lord Shiva wanted the benediction that whenever he touched someone on the head, that person's head would at once be separated from his trunk. Lord Shiva agreed. Although the benediction asked was not very commendable, because the devotee wanted to kill his enemy, Lord Shiva considered the devotee's good quality in worshipping and satisfying him and granted the benediction. Thus Lord Shiva accepted his bad qualities as magnificently good qualities. But Sati accused her father, "You are just the opposite. Although Lord Shiva has so many good qualities and no bad qualities at all, you have accepted him as bad and found fault with him. Because of your accepting his good qualities to be bad, instead of your becoming the most exalted soul, you have become the most fallen. A man becomes the greatest soul by accepting the goodness of other qualities, but by unnecessarily considering others' good qualities to be bad, you have become the lowest of the fallen souls." Doshan paresham hi ganesha sadhavo, grinantike chin nabhavajisho dvija, gunamscha falgun bahuli karishnavo, mahattamas tesh vavidad bhavanagam. Twice born Daksha, a man like you can simply find fault in the qualities of others. Lord Shiva, however, not only finds no faults. Just a sec. Lord Shiva, however, not only finds no faults with others' qualities, but if someone has a little good quality, he magnifies it greatly. Unfortunately, you have found fault with such a great soul. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Shtarne Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Well, Sati is continuing her chastisement of her father Daksha, and here she, it appears, sarcastically addresses him as Dvija. Dvija. Dvi means two, and janma, like that. Two births, a twice-born person, a Brahmin, or it can be also a Kshatriya or a Vaishya. These are the people who traditionally they would get initiation into Gayatri mantras and like that. And therefore, it's what we call Brahminical initiation, but traditionally the sort of scope for awarding it to people was a little broader, was broader than just the Brahmins. So the Kshatriyas and many of the Vaishyas would get that initiation. And as Prabhupada mentions here, a Dvija, a Brahmin, a twice-born person, initiated person, it necessarily means someone who is qualified spiritually and culturally, qualified with many, many good qualities. Prabhupada mentions here, studied the Vedic literature from a spiritual master, therefore able to discriminate between good and bad, and therefore do the good and avoid the bad. These types of qualifications are natural for Dvijas, twice-born people. And even beyond that, if we just take it from the point of view of Brahminical qualification, then Lord Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita chapter 18 verse 42, Shamadamastabaksho cham sharantir arjavam evacha jnanam vijnanam astikyam brahmakarma swabhavajam. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. These are the natural qualities by which the Brahmins work. So Sati, her basic mood is chastising her father because it's just so painfully obvious, it's just overwhelmingly obvious that he does not have those qualifications. Rather, he's just the opposite. He's a really degraded person in terms of his consciousness, just, you could say, seething with envy and then anger based on that envy. And it's just really bad. And particularly for someone who's meant to be qualified, as Daksha is meant to be qualified, to be lacking in those good qualities, but on the other hand, to be just overwhelmed by the bad qualities. This is really shocking. It's really quite ghastly, actually. People become degraded. A term which is used sometimes is Purusha Pashu. Purusha Pashu. Purusha means a human, and Pashu means an animal. Just a man animal. Looks like a human, but in terms of the qualities, the actual character, and therefore the activities which stem from the person's character, they're just low, they're just like animals. Just like animals. Extremely insensitive and just ready to do anything for his or her personal sense gratification without being concerned about what is right or wrong and what should be done and what should not be done like that. So therefore, Sati is chastising her father, Daksha, that you're just so terribly situated. And of course, within her mind, there is the idea that if I point these things out clearly enough, maybe he'll get the idea that, oh yes, I've fallen, I'm in serious trouble, I must improve myself. Ultimately, that's a hope she has, but it's not going to happen, unfortunately. It will happen in due course, but only later, when the shocking nature of what he has become and how he's fallen, it becomes just too vividly obvious to him that at this point he's just not able to get it, even when being chastised like this. And her chastisement, it's very strong, but it's all true. It's all true. And one of the characteristics of a more qualified type of person, more qualified, not necessarily the most qualified, but of the more qualified type of person is, as Chanakya Pandit says, able to take gold from a dirty place. If someone points something out, even though that person who's pointing it out is just otherwise just really lacking in qualification or even extremely unqualified. But a person who is qualified will be able to recognize that, yes, this person is offering something, suggesting something which is of value. So despite the degraded condition of this person, I can accept this, whatever good thing the person is offering. And for example, Srila Prabhupada himself, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada himself, it's a famous story. I imagine you've heard it before. Srila Prabhupada in, I think, 1967, he's just establishing the movement and something is beginning to come together. But then suddenly Srila Prabhupada had a type of like a heart attack, a heart attack, stroke, some sort of something like this. And it happened on a holiday in America. They call it Memorial Day, and I think it's in May, June, or something like that. And it's just a national holiday. So, and Prabhupada suddenly became severely indisposed, and the devotees saw, we have to get medical attention immediately. But it was a holiday and they couldn't get hold of any doctors. And finally they got hold of one doctor who came over, but he was drunk. And, it was just, what a situation. And he was drunk and he was also just not really interested. And his diagnosis was of Prabhupada, who's had a heart attack, that, he just needs more exercise, that's all. Should walk more. So he missed, from the medical point of view, he missed it completely. And Prabhupada was hospitalized either later the same day or the next day. But Prabhupada, he took that idea that he should get more exercise, and he accepted that. And he applied that for the rest of his life, basically. Every day, Prabhupada would go for a morning walk. And not just a little stroll around, but an actual exercise on the basis of that advice, so-called advice of that drunk doctor. So, like this, a person who's really qualified, there are degrees of qualification, of course, but someone who's sufficiently qualified, they will be able to recognize good, even if the good is sort of submerged, obscured by a lot more bad. But Daksha, he's getting the real sauce here, as they say, the hot chili sauce, which can burn away your misconceptions and get through to you, so you realize, yes, I'm wrongly situated, I must get myself together. But he's not able to. He's not able to. Anyway, she's trying. And she's contrasting Lord Shiva with Daksha. That Lord Shiva not only finds no faults with others' qualities, but if someone has a little good quality, he magnifies it greatly. Whereas you, Daksha, you can simply find fault in the qualities of others. Amongst the good qualities, you will find fault. In Srila Baladev Vijayabhushan's commentary on Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, verse 1, in which Lord Krishna tells Arjuna that because you're not envious of me, I will instruct you in the highest knowledge. So Srila Baladev Vijayabhushan gives a definition there of envy, because Krishna has said to Arjuna that because you were not envious, I'll instruct you. So Baladeva Vibhushan gives a definition of envy. Of course, you know, there are degrees and even varieties of envy. But the definition he gives is that envy means that a person, while observing another person and sort of trying to analyze and understand another person, the envious person will search to find faults, even in the midst of many good qualities. This is like a deeply envious person. Some other person has many good qualities, but the really envious person will overlook those qualities and try to find a fault. And if he or she finds something which looks like a fault, then they'll magnify it and just exaggerate it and emphasize it. And we mentioned yesterday, we just touched on, I think, was it yesterday? Ramachandra Puri, who was a godbrother of Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master, Ishvara Puri. And Ramachandra Puri came, and because he was senior, he was older, just in terms of physical age, and he was senior by initiation, and he'd been a devotee longer. He felt that he had the right or even the duty to just point out people's faults. And we won't do it, but that's what he felt. And so he just pointed out faults with everyone. And eventually he pointed out faults with Lord Chaitanya. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati says that Ramachandra Puri, he had achieved nishta in criticism. Nishta means steadiness, really like stability, just fixed in a certain way. Normally, of course, we apply it in terms of Krishna consciousness. Devotees on the level of nishta, if they're fixed and steady and they don't just go off into some sort of confused condition ever, they remain focused. So he says that Ramachandra Puri had achieved nishta in criticism. And when a person becomes that much situated in criticism and envy, then they become able, they develop the ability to see faults in a person which do not exist. This is very advanced level. It's one thing to see faults which are there, which are realities. It's another thing to see faults which are not there. Yes. So an interesting part of the description here in this verse, Prabhupada, of course, is talking about these things in reference to how Sati addresses or refers to Lord Shiva as Mahatma, which in the word for word we see is translated as the greatest person or greatest persons. And I had a look at Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on this verse, and he gives an extensive commentary. And he refers to two categories of person. One is, the basic term is Mahat. Mahat. It means good, or even very good, actually. A Mahat. And the other type is Asadu. Sadhu, of course, we're familiar with that term, means saintly person, but now this is Asadu, means not a saintly person. And he gives 4 different degrees of each. And just listen to this, it's interesting how he analyzes first of all, 4 levels of Mahat, or good person. There's Mahat, there's Mahatara, there's Mahatama, which is the term that's been used here for Lord Shiva by Sati. And then there is Ati Mahatama, 4 stages of good person. Then there's Asadu, Asadutara, Asadutama, and Ati, or Atyasadutama. Anyway, just listen to this. Those of good conduct accept even faults in others, since the faults can eventually be transformed by certain methods into good qualities. So he gives an example. Speaking harshly is a bad quality, but because it can be used for someone's benefit, it can become a good quality. Yeah. It can become a good quality if a person uses it sort of incisively to try to help another person or other people to learn that they should improve themselves. So it can become a good quality, like neem juice, which cures sickness, although it is bitter. I don't know if you've ever had neem juice. It's really, it's bitter. It's just not nice. But it can cure sickness. So persons who see in this way are to be considered good, Mahat, or Sadhu. So that's Mahat, that's the first level. Someone who has some fault, but it can be engaged usefully, and in that way it can be a type of a good quality. So some others, overlooking the faults, see good qualities. Seeing a merchant, although a materialist, they conclude that he must take care of guests nicely and is worthy of deliverance. They praise the good qualities and not the bad qualities, seeing conditions as they are. So therefore they may think, listen to this, this person has renounced, but he also eats a lot. So this person, the second level of good person, he does not simply think of the other person as a gluttonous beggar. These persons are superior, Mahatara. Others take small good qualities and magnify them, and do not even see small faults. So such a person may think, this person, some other person, has stolen my cloth because he is cold. And although he has a weapon, he does not attack me because he is merciful. He is virtuous. So such a person is the greatest person, Mahatma. And then others see good qualities in others where there are none. And they may think, in this world there are no bad people. Everyone is good. They're therefore the very greatest. Ati Mahatama. This sort of prefix Ati means just the greatest. Radharani is Ati Sundari. She's not just Sundari, she's Ati Sundari, the most beautiful. So then there are 4 types of bad people. Asadu, Asadutara, Asadutama, and Atyasadutama. So, yes, people, the asadus, think that good qualities will turn into faults. So therefore they think that someone who wants to help others will eventually become greedy for the assets of the others who he or she is helping. So such a person is not a gentleman, is asadu, can see good qualities, but assumes they'll turn into faults. Others see faults only, overlooking the good qualities, so they may think, this sannyasi eats rice cooked in ghee to fill his stomach. He is lusty and should be considered fallen. This person is even more improper, asadutara. Others take small faults and magnify them and see no good qualities at all. And such a person may think, this renunciate has given up the forest and lives in the house of a married man. He only wants to steal their money. This is the worst person, asadutama. And others see only faults in others, even where there are no faults. And so they think, in this world, no one is good. Everyone is evil. They are the very worst. Ati asadutama. So it's very interesting. And it's very interesting to consider these different levels and to consider them, the implications, and look at ourselves too, of course. But basically she's chastising Daksha as Ati Asadutama, the very, very worst, because Lord Shiva is faultless. On one hand, he's just so nice. He helps the most degraded subhuman types. He's just so kind. Even to people like that who are just sort of off the scale altogether of human civilization. But he helps them. He overlooks the fact that they're kind of monstrous people. And he helps them. And some of them actually become improved. That's his potency. That's what a wonderful person he is. But you, Daksha, when you look at Lord Shiva, you don't see these things, and you feel that he's degraded, although he's not degraded at all. But you become convinced, because he didn't stand up for me when I walked in. Therefore, he's just terrible, terrible person, without considering why Lord Shiva didn't stand up. And the validity of Lord Shiva not standing up to receive him in some special way. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport here gives the example of Lord Shiva with Vrikasura. Vrikasura worshipped Lord Shiva. It's described in the 9th canto that Vrikasura worshipped Lord Shiva in order to get a benediction, as Prabhupada mentions here, that whoever's head he touched the head of the person, what have I done? The head of the person would, Prabhupada says, fall off, or elsewhere it's said would sort of explode, but one way or another the person would die. So that Vrikasura, he worshipped Lord Shiva for a long time, like steadfastly offering him different things, but apparently Lord Shiva was not reacting, not responding. So then he took up a really sort of drastic type of austerity of offering his own flesh in a fire, offering it to Lord Shiva. Yes, it's the 10th canto actually. Vrikasura's in the 10th canto. And eventually he'd cut off all the flesh and offered it all into the fire. What an austerity, it's unbelievable. And there was no more flesh left. So he thought, okay, let me cut off my head and offer that. And he was just about to do that. And Lord Shiva, seeing just what a pathetic, although dedicated type of position Vrikasura was in, Lord Shiva then appeared to him and said, yes, what do you want? And granted him that benediction. So actually later, he tried to kill Lord Shiva himself, but later, and he was chasing Lord Shiva to catch him and touch his head and kill him, but Lord Krishna intervened, taking the form of a young Brahmin boy, and told Vrikasura that, this Lord Shiva, look at him. He associates with these low-class beings and so on like that. You can't trust him. What you must do, you must try out this benediction. Touch your own head, and of course it will not fall off. And then when it doesn't fall off, you know that he's given you a useless benediction. Then you chase him and kill him. So Vrikasura, he was not so bright. So he did that, and his head fell off or exploded. And Lord Shiva was saved. And then Lord Krishna told Lord Shiva, don't give benedictions like that again. So, that's the main perspective on it from Srimad Bhagavatam. But here also, Prabhupada's giving the other perspective, that Lord Shiva is so good, so kind, so broad-minded, overlooking faults, and just accepting, like in this case with Vrikasura, accepting his dedication, his steadfastness in the worship he did, accepting that as a good quality. So therefore he gave him the benediction, although, as Prabhupada says, it was not very commendable. But still, despite that, the fact is there that he showed a great broad-mindedness, and he was so spontaneously able to overlook the faults and magnify the good quality, even though it wasn't so nice. So in a certain sense, he was exhibiting qualification. Just like Srila Prabhupada explains in Bhagavad Gita at the beginning, even though Arjuna, Krishna chastises him and calls him a fool for the different reasons that Arjuna gave initially to not fight. But Prabhupada, in one purport, I think it's maybe verse 25, it's something like that in the first chapter, Srila Prabhupada says that actually in one sense, in a certain sense, Arjuna having these types of concerns, in one sense, that was good, because he was concerned. What's going to happen? What's going to happen to the women, the children, and so on like that? What's going to happen to all these people? He was concerned. So that there's good in that, even though, unfortunately, there was also quite some confusion. Yes, so like this, Lord Shiva has amazing good qualities, but Daksha, because of his amazing enviousness, couldn't appreciate them and just took it that he's a bad person. Hare Krishna. Any comment or question? Oh, yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I just wanted to ask, you gave different categories.
Use the mic.
Different categories of Mahatmas, and their quality of envy is basically, it's like a fault in ourselves. So is there a particular stage in devotional practice where we actually overcome that enviousness and actually, come to that stage?
Yeah, sure. Well, yes. Just in broad terms, in simple terms, as we go through the stage of anatha nivritti, because enviousness, lust, anger, greed, pride, envy, these things, they're anathas. And as a devotee goes through the stage of anatha nivritti, and gradually comes to nishta, steadiness in Krishna consciousness, then all those qualities, bad qualities, they reduce to the point, at least on that level, to the point where they're not really so dangerous, even though they may be there a little bit, but they're not really so dangerous as they were. And, in the first canto in chapter 2, which verse is it? 18. Yeah. Nashta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utama shloke bhakti bhavati naishtaki. It's talking about a devotee coming to the level of nishta, steadiness. And the translation is, by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart means the anathas. All that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. Almost. There's still some things there, but almost completely destroyed. And loving devotion and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who's praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So this is about the level of nishta, which comes when the anathas are to a large degree, although not absolutely, but to a large degree they've been removed, including envy. So, if it ever happens to you that you may feel when devotees are initiated, Prabhupada on a number of occasions said that when a person becomes initiated in Krishna consciousness, they're entering into the stage of anatha nivritti. Now they're initiated, so they're seriously committed and focusing on progressing in Krishna consciousness. So they're getting into anatha nivritti, and after some time of going through anatha nivritti and working on and praying for mercy to get free from anathas, then step by step the devotee comes to the level of nishta, where, as described here, all that is troublesome to the heart, the anathas, is almost completely destroyed. Is that okay? Hare Krishna. Oh, okay. Justin Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Is the stage of anatha nivritti, is it kind of like an automatic process that as we chant and engage in devotional service, it kind of goes away? Or is there some focused attention on certain anathas that is needed?
It's a combination of automatic in the sense that through regular engagement in the process, the cleansing just happens by the mercy of the Lord. But